We also have Lindsay Hammer, who leads the board of directors of Milwaukee Women, Inc., and they are here to share their report on diversity and gender representation on Wisconsin corporate boards. So Milwaukee Women, Inc. annually conducts research and publishes the status of diversity on Wisconsin company boards. In addition, they also raise awareness around best practices to achieve increased representation of women on those boards. So Lindsay will be making a presentation and a report to us. She is a partner at KPMG and has worked in the audit practice of their Milwaukee office here for 30 years. So why don't we just jump into it, Lindsay, and could you please come up here and give us your report?
Okay, thank you, David. I navigated here. I got up here without falling. This is all good. Thank you very much. You know, Milwaukee Women, Inc. is honored to work with the GMC and have some time to share the results of our annual research. And as you'll remember, we do this every year. And again, just want to thank the GMC for providing this great relationship and an incredibly great audience to share the results of our research. So the title of our research this year is Building Momentum. That sounds pretty positive, right? Yes, it is. It is positive, and we do have some positive results to share. Just as a quick reminder, we continue to work with goals. You know, I would suggest our ultimate goal, I don't think this is what our website says, but I would suggest our ultimate goal is to be so successful to put our organization out of existence, right? To work toward the day when we don't really need a Milwaukee Women, Inc. But right now, our goal is that, as we've suggested here, of 25% gender diversity on the top 50 public company boards by 2025. And again, you know, David highlighted this, and just as a reminder, I mean, we're all about maximizing performance, right? It's not just about the metrics, but it's about the results. A lot of the research very clearly shows that we can maximize performance of Wisconsin companies through increased representation of women on boards. Last year we shared a concept with you around the power of three, and hopefully that is a tagline that has stuck with you. If you will recall, the power of three is a very important item that was identified, or really, let's give credit to Catalyst, was identified and acknowledged through Catalyst, and that is through extensive research that when you hit a tipping point of at least 3 women on a board of directors, you think about your average board being 10, 11, or 12 individuals. When you hit a number of 3, you hit a very important point where you escalate or increase your performance of those diverse individuals on the board. So again, we're going to talk a little bit about Power of Three, and let's start here with our research results. We will see incredibly great line on this graph here as it relates to our Power of Three companies. These are those top 50 public companies in the state of Wisconsin that have 3 or more women on their boards. Last year we were at 12, and this year we're at 15. Congratulations to everybody, and we'll acknowledge who those companies are. Incredibly great progress as it relates to our Power of Three companies. As it relates to highlights of our research this year, a couple of other important highlights. First line here, you'll notice here, 20.8%. So we made it over 20%. Yay, I think that's a round of applause. So the top 50 companies, public companies in the state of Wisconsin last year had 18.9% representation of women on their boards. And this year, an increase of 10% up to 20.8%. So over that very important metric of 20%. As we talked about, that 25% increase in power of 3 companies. And we also very closely track executives at our top 50 public companies as well. And as you'll note here, the power of 3 as it relates to those public company executive groups increased 13%. So 34% of our top 50 public companies in Wisconsin have achieved the power of 3 in their executive ranks. When we think about and look at Wisconsin companies and Wisconsin metrics and compared to a broader statistic of S&P 500 companies, that's what this graph is showing. What you will note here is we continue to have record numbers year over year, great progress. You will note a couple of important other items on this graph, and that is that the S&P 500's rate of increase of diversity on their boards is increasing at a little bit of a higher rate than the state of Wisconsin is. So if you look at the darker bar versus the light blue bar, our S&P 500 rate of increase is a little bit higher than that of Wisconsin, and certainly is higher overall as it relates to gender diversity on those boards. Okay, I promised we would acknowledge those power of 3 companies, and here is the list of our Wisconsin power of 3 companies. A couple of the 3 new companies, MGIC, Oshkosh Corporation, and Regal Beloit, you will note here are the new power of 3 companies in 2019. Let's talk a little bit about the new women directors of those top 50 public companies in Wisconsin. We had 16 new women directors, or 16 new women named to boards of directors in Wisconsin. 41% of those newly appointed directors were women. And that is a trend that we're obviously seeing very commonly across the country. As it relates to moving that metric, we have a much more significant percent of those new appointed directors being women. Just to bring this back locally, wanted to point out that 30% of those newly appointed directors or women directors actually reside in Wisconsin. And we've acknowledged who those women are here on our slide. We really like any woman, any qualified woman on a board. But just wanted to acknowledge that it's also important to note that we have very talented women that are local women, and wanted to highlight that strong percent, 30% of those appointed do reside in the state of Wisconsin. Okay, I'm actually gonna move on to this next slide here. Here we go. Action. How do we take action? And this is something that we talked about last year. We talked about best practices, and MWI continues to meet with many of your companies, many CEOs, and talk about best practices, talk about challenges, and I'll just, a little bit of a shameless plug here. Milwaukee Women Inc. absolutely is interested in continuing those meetings. So if we've already met with you, we say thank you, and we would love to reconnect and continue to better understand and appreciate your journey and learn from you. But if we haven't met with you, we will be continuing to reach out to those in hopes of meeting with, sounds like a lofty goal, but with all leaders. Again, share our thoughts on best practices, learn from you as it relates to your best practices and challenges. We have included some thoughts here as it relates to MWI's perspective on what can you do, how can you take action. Some of these are very well demonstrated by many of our lead companies here in Wisconsin. But again, this conversation is a difficult one, but certainly there are a lot of great strategies and best practices out there. So we certainly want to make sure that we're thinking positively around how do we build the change. Okay. I am going to say thank you. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to all of you that support us. Thank you to the GMC for, again, giving us a voice here. And we appreciate the support, and we look forward to continuing to report good news and continuing to work with all of you on this very important initiative. Thank you.
So Lindsay, thank you very much for that report and the research you do and the important work that MWI does, and for telling us about the importance of the power of three.